After I have analyzed some of my biggest hands that I played in February in a previous video, and if you haven't watched that one, make sure you watch it. The link is in the description below. Now I'm continuing with the same theme. I'm going to look at some more of my hands and I will plug them into the GTO Wizard app to see if I did something wrong. And you will see I actually have found one of my biggest leaks.
In this first hand, we have a min raise from the hijack. We 3-bet with queen jack suited. Maybe not the best idea against someone who didn't start the hand with a full stack, but not a big problem. When we flop an open ender, we can either go big or check. I went for the big bet. Got called, instant service on the turn. Now we definitely have to continue, but we can go rather small and villain does the work for us. We call obviously and we win against, well, Jack 9 was an open-ender with second pair, but still an interesting choice here from villain. Anyway, let's move to the next one. We 3-bet ace-jack suited. We get a cold caller in the big blind and the original razor calls as well. This is a great flop for our hand. We can bet. I decided to just check, which is also fine because we don't need loads of protection, so that's fine. The problem is now King Jack beats us, but we still have pretty good outs. This player bets about half pot. At this point, I didn't want to raise because our hand is not really that strong, even though it looks pretty good. So just a call. And now this villain, who is clearly not the biggest crusher, he just jams for his remaining 44 big blinds. The other player gets out of the way and we need 25% equity. We are probably not good when he jams, especially because we block diamonds. However, we have both a gut shot and the flush draw, so I think we definitely have to call here, which we do, and we lose to King Jack, the turned straight. Here we raise Jack 9 off, we get called by the big blind. We flop an open ender, we go for the c-bet, which is fine. Two broadways there. I would always go for the c-bet, small blind versus big blind, but we now get raised. We get raised pretty big to more than 6x, which is maybe getting a bit borderline, but on the other hand, I definitely have to call here with the open ender, nothing else to do, especially because I probably expected this turn, giving us the nuts, so we check, and he now has an interesting choice. He just jams for 2x pot. So this is the kind of thing that you just shouldn't really do. So we obviously have a snap call and we win against top two pair. He got unlucky here, but also he should not have double X'd there on the turn, because I will most likely not call with anything that he beats, except maybe an overpair or good queen. But even those against 2x pot, I could see myself finding a fold. In this one, there's a raise, there's a call, we have an easy squeeze. However, I should probably have gone a little smaller. Whilst the original raiser folds, this guy has now double called, so I expect him to have some sort of a middling pair, and because of that, I think this is a mandatory check now. Also, Solver agrees with me. It checks over 98% of the time, and I was just thinking it's good to go for a big c-bet on such a board, which I can see why you would do it, but with this type of hand, we don't have a backdoor flush draw. We have one over, and if we expect him to have a hand like 6s or 7s or 4s or 8s or something like that, then I don't think we will be able to get him off that, and we would have to barrel quite heavily. So my almost half pot sized c-bet here is a bit half baked. We get the expected call. Now we have a gut shot, and at this point I think now we could actually go for a bigger bet again, because I think a hand like 6s, 7s, 8s would now fold if we bet big. But we now check, he checks behind, and lo and behold, we river our straight. And at this point, we just have to figure out how much we want to bet. We're definitely not going to check here, because I do not expect him to bet after he checked behind the turn, but I didn't want to shove. I went for this in between size 2/3, and we do get looked up by pocket sevens. Queen 10 off, which we raise. We get called by the small blind and we flop. Bottom 2, and he donks into us. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, what can he have? Maybe an ace, maybe a queen, maybe some sort of a draw, king 5 of diamonds or something like that. I wouldn't be shocked. Whatever it is at this point, definitely raising. He calls. When this deuce comes, I almost pot again. He calls again. And this is an interesting river now, and I think I made a mistake. I thought that against such a fish, I could go fairly thin, so I just jammed, and jam means 28 big blinds only. Half pot, I wouldn't have jammed for anything bigger than that. But the question is now, what can we get called by that we beat? So yes, ace X of something, and this is why I did that. And maybe I'm biased because I know what hand he has now, but because we lose to a jack, and we lose to pretty much any 2 pair that makes sense. I think there are just way too many hands we lose against to go for such thin value, and he did snap us off with queen 3 for the rivered backdoor flush. Now, I did not expect that, but yeah, so I think the river bet was just too thin.
Can I just ask you for a very quick favor? If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. That would mean a lot to me. Thank you.
So this one here is a hand that plays differently in real life than it does to the solver. So there is a raise. We have an easy 3-bet on the button, and the small blind now cold 4 bets. And I decided to call. This already is kind of borderline. Solver would think, yeah, this is a hand to go to war with, but against real opponents who just don't cold 4-bet enough with hands that are not aces, kings, queens, and ace king, I think this is just a fold. But because we have position, I kind of decided that I wanted to call. So I think a fold would already be pretty good. At this point, once we call and he goes for the smallish c-bet, we definitely have to call. And now he checks on this turn. We can either just check or go for a small value to get a hand like ace king or maybe ace queen if he has it, to just call or fold that out. Either way, it's fine. So I went for 18 big blinds, and now we get check jammed on, and this is where me and Solver just disagree. Solver says this is a snap call. I do not think that humans at 25 NL, so I definitely think this is a fold, and so I folded, and we will never find out what villain had. Pocket 3s, and we have a limper, easy limp behind. This is a great flop for us. We could either check with a look to check raise, or we can bet ourselves. I went for the check. This original limper now bets, and I check raise, as I said, and we get called. We go for a big bet, get called, and another fairly blank. I mean, it's not a real blank river because 6-4 gets there, but I'm not afraid of anything. He's got 31 big blinds behind. Let's just shove, and we get called by ace-6. Well, yeah, I guess if you flop an ace there after you limp with ace-6, it's hard to get away, but yeah, this is why you shouldn't limp there in the first place. We raise ace-5 suited, get 3-bet, we 4-bet and get called. On this flop, we definitely have to go for a small continuation bet. We get called, and on this one, I'm happy to go for another bet fairly big. I could have gone a little bit smaller. Then third pot, actually, he calls again. And here, do we want to go for the triple barrel bluff or not? Seems unlikely that he will fold now, because if we jam, that's only 44 big blinds, which is giving him way too good a price, so I don't think we can get him to fold anything here. Definitely a check behind. And yeah, I think he would have just called with pocket tens. Not impossible that he would have folded them, but I think at this point we had to give up. We 3-bet a7 suited, small blind versus button. He calls, easy small c-bet. He calls. Now we have a flush draw, and usually when you pick up a lot of equity on the turn with this sort of an SPR, you want to slow down. Not me though, I don't know why at this point, but yeah, I think this would just be an easy check. If you see 2 kings, 2 sixes, we now chop with any other ace, and we have the flush draw. But I thought because the flush doesn't mean much, because we'll obviously lose to a king and a 6. I think that's why I thought I would bet here. I get called, and now we are playing the board. And at this point, I went for a tiny bet here. Don't really know what I wanted to accomplish by this, because now obviously this happens and I have to fold. So this was another one that I played pretty poorly, and I do want to check this one out in the solver. Okay, so solver says non-existing GTO spot, but solver was okay with our raise here. And solver would have bet bigger than I did. That is interesting. That solver would go half pot here on king, king 6. And at this point, solver would check, and that's what I thought. That is the big issue that I had here. Next hand. Now we have pocket kings. We raise against the limp. We get raised ourselves. We now raise again, and he calls. And the dreaded ace on the flop, so I think checking is fine here. And when he checks again, I elect to check again, and he now bets pretty big. If he hadn't bet, I would definitely have gone for a bet now, and I would have gone for a pretty big bet, because I think I would get called by queens, jacks, tens if I go even maybe pot or slightly over pot. At this point, I don't think we have anything else than a call, and we lose against the ace. Okay, so he limp raised ace 9 off and then called our 4-bet, and then he got there. Ace queen, similar situation. We raise, but this time we get called. On this board, we can bet small, we get called. He checks again. Now I check behind. I don't really know why. I should definitely go for value here. And at this point, once he bets really, really, really big, I don't think we have anything else than a call. Don't see why we would ever shove, because we would only get called by an ace or better, and better could be pocket tens. I just call, and he has the ace, and unfortunately I missed a lot of value on the turn. I don't know why I got scared there. That was really silly of me not to bet this turn. Now we have ace king, we squeeze, we get called by the initial raiser. We can either bet big or check. I default to the bet and get called. On this turn, once we get called, we have 2 overs and we have the gut shot, so I continue barreling, hoping to get him off a hand like maybe 8, 7, 6s, possibly would even fold 10s, but he jams and we have an easy fold. This is another one. I just want to check the solver. Okay, so solver does agree with the squeeze, obviously. And here, as I said, you can either check or bet big. I bet big, so I'm okay with that. And here at this point, yes, 100% check. We're losing some EV by betting, so this would have been the best course of action, but because I bet and he jammed, and look at this, it's saying that we should have a call. But this is the type of thing where you should just not call in real life. Yes, it's not impossible that he has a draw or some spew here, but it's just way too expensive to call. And I don't think this makes much sense. Let's see what the percentage that we needed. 27%. I just don't think we're good 27% of the time against this jam, so definitely a fold. We 3-bet 5-6 suited, we get cold 4-bet, and yeah, this is another one of those where I think in hindsight now it's probably just a fold, because whilst we do have a good hand, the best possible hand to crack aces or kings or so, but in a 4-bet pot out of position and against a cold 4-better, we really need to smash the board heavily, and so I think I should have just folded there. Now once we hit our 6, it gets really annoying because we can't fold now. We have to call, but once this ace comes and he bets again, but he just bets so tiny that we only need to be good 14% of the time. We have 5 outs left, which is about 11%. Would we get any implied odds if he has an ace hand like ace king or so? Maybe, but I still think this is a fold, and yet I called, and on this river he checks and we lose to pocket kings. Next hand we have pocket queens. We face this course of action, and at this point I think shoving is probably the best course of action. However, don't expect it to make tons of money, and same goes for a normal sized 4-bet. And we get called, but of course if you flop top set, that's always gonna help. Go for a small c-bet, get called. Now we basically have the nuts, and we check with the nuts, and he bets 10% pot, so definitely have to raise. Now there is urgency to get money into the pot, and at this point we're obviously not afraid of the flush. We would be delighted if he had the flush. We can just jam and he can just fold. So a bit unlucky there. Maybe he was afraid of the flush, but he did call our bet on the turn, so he must have had something, but maybe he had jacks or tens or so that he found a fold with. We call a7 against a button raise. We check call a big bet on the flop, and once the king hits and he bets 3/4, it's a tough one, but I think this is actually a call with the ace of hearts. So we don't need to raise this one necessarily, because we do have some showdown value against all his bluffs. But the thing is, like, he shouldn't have too many bluffs that don't contain the ace of hearts. So maybe that is a reason why we want to fold. But I did raise here actually. So that's an interesting strategy now. But I think I probably just wanted to get him to fold a king, but he shouldn't have bet a king that big once the flush comes in. So when he calls, and now we have 2 pair, and at this point we can decide whether we want to try to get him off a flush, which I don't think will really work even if we jam, or if we just take our showdown value here, or just bet small. Just making maybe a small bet would make most sense now, and that's exactly what I did. And he calls with a set of 8s. So solver doesn't seem to agree with me, but it agrees that this is a call. And at this point, it says we should just call. Folding would be a mistake, but raising is only marginally worse in terms of EV. So I think still calling obviously would have been the best. And now on this river, it would not bet, it would just check, and it thinks that we lost quite a bit of EV. Ace king suited. We go 3 ways to this flop, and not the worst flop I've seen for our hand. So we go with a small bet here. Against one opponent I might have just checked behind because I don't have super many bets on a monotone board with 3 low cards, but exploitatively against 2 players, one of which is short stacked. Yes, I do realize that we block their continues with having both the ace and the king of hearts, but there is a chance still that they have maybe the queen of hearts or a pocket pair with a heart, so I think it's okay. And at this point it's slightly annoying now because I don't really see a lot what we could get called by except for like the queen of hearts or so, but we are up against someone who's shaping up to be not the greatest player. 75-50 over 4 hands. I mean, I know that's not a sample. He could have had aces, kings, and ace queen in those hands. Nonetheless, I think we're good against this type of player. So now I'm just going really tiny because I want to just keep him in with anything. Like if he has pocket eights with the 8 of hearts, then he would call, but he might not call against something bigger. But he now min clicks us. I'm not sure what this really means here, but yeah, I just thought I'll just call this one and let him bluff if he has bluffs. And once the ace comes in, he now jams, and we have to be good 38% of the time. We have the nut flush. Would you call or would you fold? And I think no one would ever fold here, would you? So we definitely have to call here, I think, and we do lose to the 4 of hearts, and this is kind of a bad beat, but I still don't think that anyone in this world would fold. If you would fold here, please let me know in the comments though.
So, what is my biggest leak then? Well, from what I've seen today, the mental game, and it didn't seem like it, but I think it is because I actually know most of the time what the right play would be. But when I played, maybe it was because I was multi-tabling, but maybe it was because I got too emotionally attached to some hands. I wanted to fight hard for pots where I shouldn't have done it. I think I have found that that is the mental leak.